Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, February 6, 2024 regular business meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, we have a quorum with all council members present, including Councilmember Parsley, who is joining us remotely this evening. So with that, I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. All right, so first up, so we're actually going to do, for special recognition, we're going to reverse the order here so that we give time for our presenter or recipient of the proclamation some time to arrive in the chambers. So we're going to begin with our item 2B, which is proclamation for Immigrant Advocacy Day. Mayor Pro Tem.
Whereas the City of Olympia has prospered throughout its history from the extensive socioeconomic, political, and cultural contributions made by immigrants from every part of the globe, and whereas the City of Olympia welcomes all who enter this country to escape social, religious, political, or economic oppression, or those in pursuit of its founding promise of a brighter future, and whereas the City of Olympia is dedicated to the values of inclusivity, diversity, and hope, and whereas the City of Olympia has committed to securing the freedom, rights, and dignity of all people who reside here, and whereas, as declared, Sanctuary City, the City of Olympia continues to demonstrate its abiding commitment to protecting all immigrants residing here, and whereas the City of Olympia welcomes the advocates for immigrants and refugees from throughout Washington who will attend the legislative session to advocate for legislative measures that will protect immigrants and refugees during and after the pandemic. And whereas pro-immigrant measures are desperately needed to compensate for the weakening and removal of protections at the federal level. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim February 7th, 2024 as Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Day in the City of Olympia and urge all residents to join immigrant advocates to petition or elected state representatives to enact legislation to provide state and local government protections to all immigrants and their families in the state of Washington. Signed in the City of Olympia, Washington, the 6th day of February, 2024, Olympia City Council, Dante Payne, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. So I'd like to invite up to our podium here Sasha Wasserstrom, the Policy Director at the Washington Immigration Solidarity Network, and Bob Ziegler from Strengthening Sanctuary Alliance to receive the proclamation.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. I am Bob Ziegler, and thank you, Mayor. I'm Bob Ziegler, and I'm a member of Strengthening Sanctuary Alliance. I've been before you before, and you've given us proclamations. I think this is the fifth one ever since about 2019, and it's greatly appreciated. It means a lot to the immigrants who come here. They feel there's somebody has their back, and I just want to thank you for that. Introduce real quickly Sasha Wasserstrom, who's Weissen Immigrant Solidarity Network. She's the policy director, and Rakaya, she's the digital director at Weissen. And invite Sasha up for a few words.
Thank you to the City Council of Olympia for, as Bob said, the fifth year of declaring an Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Day here in the City of Olympia. It is so heartwarming for the network of over 400 organizations and individuals within Weissen to be able to feel that we are welcome here in Olympia, that our members who are immigrants and refugees of varying statuses, including undocumented folks, that they can come here, feel safe to advocate for themselves, and be welcome here in the city. So we really appreciate this fifth year, this proclamation, and we thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know that Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen will be joining you tomorrow for the Immigration Day at the Capitol campus. So very much look forward to hearing a report out from her on that. And so at this time, I'd like to invite you up to take a photo with council if you would like. So please join us. All right, so thank you very much. So with that, we will move on to our, back to item 2A on the agenda, which is a proclamation recognizing Black History Month. And we have a shared reading for the council.
Whereas, in February, the United States recognizes and reflects on the sacrifices, contributions, and achievements made by generations of African Americans in their storied history of our nation, and acknowledges the ongoing struggle to keep America's founding promise of a more perfect and more equal union. And
whereas, the African American experience is woven into the historical fabric of the Pacific Northwest, from York's full membership in Lewis and Clark's expedition through the first African American pioneer in the Northwest, George W. Bush, who established the Bush Prairie, now known as our neighbor, the city of Tumwater, and on through today. And
whereas the history of the city of Olympia would be far less rich and diverse without the contributions of Olympia's African American residents, such as Rebecca Howard, the beloved 19th century entrepreneur who owned and managed the popular Pacific House in downtown Olympia. And whereas today 3% of Olympia's population is Black or African American, of the 9,000 new Olympia residents added between 2010 and 2020, 11% were Black or African American, which suggests a positive trend. We've got an increasing population over time. And
whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson, noted Black scholar and son of formerly enslaved people, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History and initiated Black History Week on February 12, 1926. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month and is now celebrated all over North America. And
whereas the observance of Black History Month demands our attention to the continued need to dismantle racism and build a community that lives up to its democratic ideals. And whereas our community acknowledges the systemic racism perpetuated by individuals in our nation's government through slavery, segregation, mass incarceration, police brutality, and economic disparity. And whereas African Americans have countless achievements despite these past and present cruelties. And
whereas the City of Olympia proudly embraces the cultural diversity of our community and honors organizations, families, and individuals of African American descent in appreciation of their invaluable contributions that continue to enrich the history and culture of our city and unite and sustain us as a community. And whereas the City of Olympia is honored to partner with Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture to host a public event to celebrate Black history during February 2024. And
Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim the month of February 2024 as Black History Month in the city of Olympia, and encourage all Olympians to recognize and honor the African American experience and work toward a nation where all people have equal opportunity to thrive. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 6th day of February 2024, Olympia City Council, Dante Payne, Mayor. And now I'd like to invite up Javon Bird, who is the founder of the Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture, to receive the proclamation and share a few words if you'd like.
So I'd like to thank the City Council and also Mayor Dante Payne. My name is Javon Bird, but I have a different name, Ifa Tunji. Ifa Tunji means Ifa rises again or has been resurrected. Since the enslavement of African peoples on this land, our culture has been repressed, time and time, despite all of our contributions. The Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture was created to combat this, to share history, culture, because the Yoruba have a saying of the southwest region of Nigeria. What happens to the river that forgets its source? It dries, right? The Hawk Foundation says that we will never dry up. The African American community will remain strong and powerful. That we will use our connections and use our research and culture to be able to spread this throughout Washington State and make changes. Currently, the Department of Health has funded the Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture and spreading African-centered healing modality, drum facilitation, and culture throughout the state. And I'd like to thank the City of Olympia for 3 years in a row helping to fund the Black History Month celebrations that we've done here in this very city. I said before that my name is Ifa Tunji. Ifa is a religious system from the southwest region of Nigeria. I've been an initiated priest for almost 15 years. This was one of the indigenous African religions that was stripped away from African peoples as they came to this country, amongst many other traditions. But as my name says, that it will rise again, so has so many different African traditions and African American traditions come into the schools. I'd like to open this up with a prayer and a praise to the ancestors. Adiwa ojo, adiwa orun, owo to ma iba re, iba baba iba yeye, iba oluwo iba dubona. Our source will never dry up. We will remain a strong and powerful people. Ari àwọn mi tutu, mi ba de lorun bo si aye. Ọmọ mi tutu ń tẹ́yẹ ṣe la gẹ́gẹ́gẹ́dẹ́, ọmọ mi tutu ń tẹ́yẹ ṣe la gẹ́gẹ́gẹ́dẹ́ o. We will never forget where we come from and continue to praise the Egungun, praise the ancestors. Bata bale bango, ari àwọn Abegunle, ọmọ ọba Abadesi fún kòtò wáyé, bobo ìwọ́ì, ẹ̀yàn ọmọ ọbẹ̀ Egungun ní Sambo. The Hawk Foundation invites the City of Olympia, as well as the rest of Washington State, to walk with us as we right the wrongs of the past, to walk with us as we continue to educate the state and make statewide change as well as countrywide change. So, again, I say thank you, and I look forward to continued partnership as we right the wrongs of the past. Ashe.
Ashe. All right. Well, at this time, I'd like to invite you up to join us for a... Oh, yes, I'll get to that. I'd like to invite you up for a photo, but first, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit of information of the upcoming Black History Month event that we're having in next week, actually.
February 15th, starting at 5:30, we're going to be having a celebration of African American history. We'll be having the Buffalo Soldiers. It's going to be at SPSCC. We're going to be having the Buffalo Soldiers. We're going to be having multiple lectures and also live music for everyone to join in. and embrace the African diaspora in Africa.
Thank you very much, Devon. So let's go ahead and get that photo.
A little bit different than Team Spirit, right?
Well, thank you all very much. Any comments or questions from council? All right. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to joining you for our Black History Month celebration next week. I also want to thank you for being here and not just sharing, you know, the typical African American experience, but you're bringing a little bit of Africa to the chambers and to the city, and that's very much appreciated. You know, I think sometimes we think of African American and we don't really think about what we mean when we say that, but there is a word there, you know, Africa, right? That I think we just sort of glance over and we don't really give it much thought. Right. So I very much appreciate you reminding us of our roots and where we come from. And this might be a little controversial to say, but everybody in this room, it traces back to the motherland. Right. So, you know, just thank you so much for that reminder. Very much looking forward to celebrating with you next week. And congratulations on the baby. All right, well, we will move on to public comment. At this time, we do have a few people signed up, I believe, here in chambers and also remotely as well. For those of you who are speaking, you do have 2 minutes to present your comments to us. There is a timer to my right. If you are here in the chambers, you have the green, yellow, and red lights to indicate how much time you have left in your public comment. And feel free to email us your comments if you do not finish your comments within the 2-minute time frame. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, so beginning with the folks that are in chambers tonight, we have John Pettit. No.
Good evening, Council. It's been a long time since I showed up and visited with you. And, you know, many times people come here when we have distress, problems. We get to unload all the garbage on you. Well, I think that the first thing I need to do is compliment the council. I would tell you this from an observation of somebody who, I don't live in this city, but have property here. But I want to say that the city of Olympia, I believe, is better from a standpoint of general social balance and everything now than what I have seen in a number of years. It doesn't happen without the pains that you've been suffering. And there's been a lot of healing going on. and caring about people to get them to better places. It's not an easy task to serve your community. Everybody has an idea about how it could be better, how you can solve the problems of the world, and to join things together in order to create that better place to live. It's a very hard task. Somehow they put this thing like money in the way of getting things done. But you've had a good healing time for the city. You have good management over here assisting you in your path. This is probably a notable time because most time I've been a little bit on the harsh side when I make comments, but I think you guys deserve it. And so therefore, kudos to you. I'm hoping that maybe other organizations like the county government can become as good and strong as you guys are. Thank you much.
Thank you. We'll have an opportunity for council to comment after the rest of the public comment. So next we have Elise Ogden, and I understand that Elise is in chambers with us. Is that correct, Kelly? Oh, well, everyone needs. Yes. Okay. Everybody needs a break sometimes. So next we have online. So we have virtual public comment. We have Esther Cronenberg. So Esther, when you're ready, please unmute your mic and go ahead.
Esther's traveling over now. She just needs to mute and open her camera. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, hi. I'm calling in about the Cooper Crest timber trespass that happened in June of 2022. I'm happy that the city pursued legal damages against the logger, the Silver Mantle company that did that. And the city has had arbitration, and they did get the Judge McPhee to agree to treble damages for breaking the law. And I believe in the process now that you're in a settlement process. I wasn't sure what that meant. I'm assuming that since you got treble damages, you're going to get treble damages and won't settle for less, since that's what was owed to you. And I'm hoping that that money is used to help restore Cooper Crest, either through the Parks Department or through all the ecosystems that's taken that on. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, and that you're sure that legal department does recoup the full amount that was granted to them by the judge, and that money is earmarked for use for restoration of that property. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, that concludes public comment for this evening. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Madron.
Just want to thank John for coming in here and saying nice things to us. Good to see you.
Councilmember Gilman.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. Yeah, I appreciate the positive comments, Mr. Pettit. And for Ms. Cronenberg, I'm also really glad that we've seen through this seeking damages and a settlement, and through other ways making an investment to help to restore that property. And then just for council's information, I've continued the conversation with Department of Natural Resources that I continue to believe that there should be a different set of rules for a clear cut inside an urban growth area than there is out in the wilds. And right now there's not a provision for considering the local government's concerns or rules or the impact on, more urban neighbors. So that's an ongoing discussion, and former Senator Karen Fraser is also helping me to speak with those folks. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilman. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. I'd just like to thank Councilmember Gilman for staying on the dime with on that conversation with the state. I think there's a logging project that's about to happen in our neighboring city, and regardless of what they're going to build there, I keep thinking about those trees that I feel like are of significant age for our urban area. They're bigger than anything in many of our parks, and so I'd really love to have a better conversation about that, especially in larger tracts.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you, John, for being here. I know that you got an opportunity to speak with a few of us just before the meeting got started. I didn't get that opportunity. I'm usually prepping for meetings, but I do want to express my gratitude to you for sticking around and expressing that publicly this evening. And also thank you for giving a shout out to our staff who often don't get recognized for the great work that they're doing to help us continue to make this place better. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. All right, so that concludes public comment, and we will move on to adoption of the consent calendar. But before we do so, I am tracking that we have 3 items to pull this evening, which are 4G, which is the approval of the 2024 Land Use and Environment Committee Work Plan, 4H, which is the approval of the 2024 Community Livability and Public Safety Committee Work Plan, and 4I, which is the approval of the 2024 Finance Committee Work Plan. So we're going to take these, we're gonna have a discussion on these in order as they occur on the agenda, starting with our chair of the Land Use and Environment Committee to kick things off for item 4G, Councilmember Madrone.
All right. Well, one big change with the Land Use and Environment Committee this year that I suggested that we might do earlier is that we are going to be meeting at 4 p.m. on the third Thursday of each month, with a couple of exceptions in terms of what day it is, just due to conflicts. But looking forward to that new meeting time in terms of having manageable workloads for us and for staff. We already went through January, where we addressed renter protections and also our work plan. And, I won't speak to everything here, but you can see that we have moments in the year where we are quite full in terms of the things that we are working on, and then some areas where we're a little bit light through the summer, which is kind of nice, but it's also really nice for staff, because we are working on our comprehensive plan update. Staff are going to be incredibly busy, so we just wanted to be very conscious of that even if they're not bringing things to us constantly on the Land Use Committee, they are working very busy behind the scenes, because as we get to later in the year, you see there's a few comprehensive plan update items on there, so we'll really start digging into that work later in the year. There were a couple of items I wanted to note on here. In April, we have downtown parking enforcement on here, and one thing I've been talking with staff about is doing something for the full council on our parking strategy, because I think most of us were not here when that strategy was adopted, myself included, so that everybody can get briefed on what that strategy is. And if you have any feedback before we discuss this on the Land Use Committee, I'm curious if that's a welcome thing for you all, and if so, then we might adjust timing accordingly with that item. But I know it's an issue that kind of popped up last year, and I think it would be good for all of us to get grounded in the parking strategy and have some, maybe there's some fresh feedback on it that the Land Use Committee needs to consider. But I'd like us to do that before we take it up as a Land Use Committee. So that's something we could chat about. I also noticed that we have a housing and homeless services update, and I noticed that on the CLIPS work plan too. Last year, we got the update, and then it came to the full council, so we got the update twice. I'm thinking this is probably something that all 7 of us are interested in. So my proposal, and I don't think we need to change it now, we just cross it off later, is to take it off both of the work plans and just bring that update to the full council. We'll save Darian a little bit of time that way, but then all 7 of us will get information that we all really want to have. And also noting that, while we do have some meetings in the middle of the year that are, might only have 1 item on it, some of these are lengthy, but it's also not just to save staff time, but we also have this to be scheduled list below. So if things do pop up that are ready sooner, it's something that we could discuss, but also sometimes things get referred to land use. So it leaves space there as well. Yeah, those are my overall comments on the work plan, and I welcome any thoughts or questions from y'all.
Any questions or comments for council member or Chair Madrone? Council member Gilman.
Okay. I'm curious about the sidewalk policy is on the to be scheduled, and I know there's some moving parts right now. Just tell us a little bit how you're going to engage with that this year.
Yeah, and I asked that one of Leonard before we even talked about it in land use. I said, where's sidewalks on here? So this full year, 2024, we are doing the assessment of our sidewalks. We're going to be doing the inventory, the condition of all of them, and it's expected that early 2025, that will come to the land use committee. Good. Yeah.
Great question. Good catch. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the land use chair for doing some work plan comparisons and reaching out to see how we can streamline some of our processes and just get clear on what we're asking to do, and hopefully not duplicating effort. So, and then I also just wanted to respond to you is I would be in favor of the housing and homelessness strategic plan as well as the parking strategy coming to the full council. That sounds like 2 large items of interest, and I'd love to brush up.
Yeah, and to be clear, for the parking strategy, be like briefing the full council on what the strategy is and getting that feedback, and then it would come to land use for any like updates or changes or whatever. So, and just what Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen was mentioning, there was a couple of things that were on both of our work plans too that we decided were actually important for them to be on both of them. One of those is a code enforcement update, code enforcement for land use committee. I mean, that's where we first talked about doing a rental housing registry. Right. Yet there's different things that come up through code enforcement that would really be informative for community livability and public safety. So, having those on both work plans, maybe with a different lens for that. And then there was also the creative district. It'll go to clips, and you all can have feedback on that, and then it'll come to land use for the final recommendation. So we worked through some of those things to make sure we weren't duplicating and not wasting people's times too. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I just wanted to add, that Councilmember Madrone, I see here that for last month you took up renter protection measures on the agenda for your first item of business for the year. And I do want to express just some concern that I have in terms of the timing of that. I do have a question about timeline, but my concern really is that as we implement a rental housing registry, we're just sort of getting that off the ground, and I know that there are many community members that have questions about that, and particularly our landlords in our community. And so I'm a little bit worried that potentially we're adding more to their load when they're just getting an understanding of this rental housing registry. So could you give me a little bit of a sense of a timeline on when this might be coming to the full council for consideration, and maybe why we're considering bringing it so soon after what seems like what we just did with rental housing registry?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, we discussed having this, and this is what I emailed to everybody, and I can speak to these recommendations as I'm talking, but This is what I emailed to you all last week, just so that you would have a heads up on what we discussed in the Land Use Committee. And what we talked about in terms of bringing this to the full council is one of these, or I guess a couple of these items require a public hearing. And so waiting until legislative session is over and doing a public hearing in March where we'll get a full presentation on it as council, we'll hear from the community, and then and then an action would happen at a later date, and we can decide when that will be, after we have the public hearing, and we can understand if more work is needed or if we're ready to move forward with it as a business item or on consent. So some of these items are actually related to implementing the rental housing registry. And one of the reasons that it was not included with the package with the rental housing registry is because we realized too late that it needed a public hearing. And so that would be for tenant relocations assistance if there's a unit that is condemned, if there's a unit that's demolished, substantially rehabbed, if there's a change of use, the requirements around tenant relocation assistance. So as we go into, landlords are registering their homes and going through the inspection process, we're likely going to find some that are uninhabitable, and we want to make sure that those tenants are taken care of. So these ones are really tied. These are ones that we really want in place when we start going through that process. And then there's another one that is connected to a policy that we've passed before around extended notice of rent increases. And so this is the policy of allowing a tenant to break a lease without penalty after receiving notice that their rent is going to increase more than 5%. So we've said if it's going to go up 5%, you have to give somebody 120 days notice. 10%, 180 days notice. Which was an oversight on our part was not allowing the tenant to break their lease, say they find a new housing option in 60 days. As it is now, they're kind of on the hook for the rest of that lease unless we say that they aren't. So those ones are connected to policies that we have already passed, and they're kind of important in terms of the implementation of those policies. There's another one, and I know the tenant relocation assistance component of that was covered in the study session that we did in August last year. And there's another one, it's kind of an emerging issue, but I think a lot of us have known about it, and that's the requiring a right to install an AC unit. This is another one that's been discussed with the council previously, but as we are experiencing hotter summers, there are some tenants that are not allowed to install AC units into their rentals. And so what we are recommending is a policy modeled on Oregon state law. And it does allow the landlord to be the one to put it in to make sure it gets done in a safe way. So I think it's a good policy, but that's one that I do think is urgent because we don't know what this summer is going to be like, but it's we've seen some really hot ones lately, and I would like to see tenants protected. There's another one that was also spoken about in the August study session we did, and that's around junk fees. And so what we're seeing, a newer trend that we're seeing is that new fees are being created and put onto tenants, like, notice fees, garbage valet fees. And so the recommendation from the Land Use Committee is to limit what types of fees can be charged. Late fees, fees for damages, application fees, but only limit to that, so new ones can't just be created all the time. And then there are some that we have not yet discussed as a full council yet. And some of these are from looking at what other cities have done since we as a full council have talked about these. One of them is tenant relocation assistance for economic displacement. So, if your rent goes up 5% and you can't afford it and you have to move, providing 2 months of rent from the landlord to the tenant to help with relocation, and 10% increase. It would be 3 months of rent. Now, one of the reasons we wanted to wait for the public hearing on all this is because if rent stabilization passes at the legislature, this is moot. It doesn't matter. However, as a council, longer than I've been on council, we've been asking for rent stabilization. And if the legislature continues to not be able to deliver on that, this is an intervention that we can take to support tenants in our community. And then as we were looking at some actions that the Tacoma City Council took, there are some around prohibiting landlords from exceeding income to rent ratios. So, how much income tenants have to make to be able to get into a unit, 2.5 to 3 times the amount of rent. It prohibits landlords from placing blanket bans on prospective tenants based on felony or drug convictions or arrest records. And there are some exceptions to that, when it comes to certain violent offenses, sex offenses, arson, and drug manufacturing, distribution. There are still some protections in there, in terms of what can be screened out. But it also will help folks who do have something on their record better access housing. And then, also not requiring a social security number from somebody if they don't have one. So having landlords accept alternatives to a social security number for those that don't have them if they're, as they're screening for tenants. And then the final one that we've discussed in land use, I feel like, since we've been talking about all this, but it never quite made it across the finish line. And I think it's good. It's part of the rental registry program too. And I think I think this is something that is kind of a natural thing to have happen. But providing a copy of tenant rights at leasing, and I think we could read that as rights and responsibilities. I think that's fair. So just asking to see some language on that the city can provide for landlords and require it to be given at the time of lease signing. So I know it's a big suite of things, and I know it feels like we just did something and now we're doing all these things. The alternative is, for one, we know these needs exist and we would be delaying on addressing them, but also, if we just take little bites here and there, I think that we would hear from landlords that we're constantly changing things rather than getting it done at once and having them all in place at the time the rental housing registry really kicks off. So that was a lot, but I hope it's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Councilmember Madrone. It's a very thorough explanation, and I appreciate that. So it's essentially a tenant protections package, and I would implore our staff as we engage with landlords and tenants in our community about the rental housing registry program that we do inform them of these upcoming proposals that are going to come before the council and prepare them and have them understand that this is not necessarily things that are new, but these are things that are sort of complementing the rental housing registry program. So with that, I'll go to Councilmember Parsley.
Does she have her hand? Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Madrone. That was a great explanation. And I appreciate your question, Mayor Payne. My question is, and this is for a future date, I see on June 20th, you're going to be hearing about the missing housing ordinance updates and how we're harmonizing our two different ordinances, as well as the legislation that comes down. It would be great if we could see at council maybe a 30 or 60,000 foot presentation sometime subsequent to that, so that we can all understand that, because that might come as a question to us as we're moving forward.
Yeah, and I can give a little bit more context for those who are curious. So before I came on council, middle housing policies were passed by the council. They were appealed through the Growth Management Hearings Board and were finally resolved, a few months ago, last year sometime. But in the meantime, when I was on council, we passed housing options as a new ordinance to replace that in the meantime. And so now we have these two ordinances that are similar but different. And then on top of that, we've had changes at the legislature requiring us to set a certain baseline around middle housing and ADUs, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be looking at all three of these pieces. Some are required to do, and some of them, are things that the council's decided it wanted to do in the past, and just making a decision on where we land with these three sets of policies to work with. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Councilmember Madrone?
All right, and I just want to say I'm also good with bringing those other two items before the full council. I do support that. I think that makes most sense and most efficient, and I saw an enthusiastic thumbs up from Darian back there too, so that works. All right, so we will move on to item 4H, which is the approval of the 2024 Community Livability and Public Safety Committee Work Plan, chaired by our Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor. I am so excited about the Community Livability and Public Safety Work Plan for this year. I think it's a really good balance of both of those things, instead of heavy in too much of community livability or public safety, or honestly, appointments to advisory boards, commissions, and committees. I think we've done a really good job this year to strike a good balance. We also added some new things that community livability and public safety hereby will be called CLIPS. To the CLIPS work plan that we haven't seen before. So that includes, we added parks, arts, and recreation. That's very much related to community livability. We're also doing quite a bit in the equity space with the community discrimination assessment findings, as well as iterative process updates to the equity framework. I'm really glad that we're a city that is not only saying we'll take action, also taking action, but then also looking into our processes and figuring out how can we improve on that. So I think that just makes me happy. And then we also added quite a bit in public safety. We're incorporating regular updates from the fire department, and also bringing in code enforcement, as was mentioned. And then also this year within our public safety update, we'll be learning about the state of human trafficking and how that can be prevented in our community, including opportunities for education and how does that go about being addressed as well. So we're also looking at the Olympia Police Department staffing study, as well as recommendations for the community oversight of law enforcement. Some other items of interest is assessing the current state of childcare in Olympia, and that's been, at least during my time, a long-standing item of interest for council colleagues. And then, and I'm very excited about this one, is we're going to be discussing the evaluation of advisory groups, the committees, commissions, and boards, and have decided that if there are any recommended changes, that would be taking place at a future state, because of course the beginning of the year or around spring, the CLIPS committee does do quite a number of interviews and a long solicitation process for getting more advisory group members. With that, we also, I'll save that for reports. So that is our CLIPS work plan, and welcome any comments or questions.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to congratulate you on adding childcare into that work plan. I think it's a significant conversation that it's time to have, and then would like to point out that our consultant helping us with the homeownership study, Paul Knox, wrote the Department of Commerce's most recent, just right before COVID, the child care crisis in Washington State. He was on staff at the Department of Commerce and staffed that statewide advisory committee that put that report together. So we have that talent in that contract, and I do a lot of that work in my day job, and I'm just really excited to see a city take it on.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments for Mayor Pro Tem? All right.
Can I just add something?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the council colleagues that came forward or reached out to me before our work plan, before tonight really, to consider adding things to the work plan. As well as a committee effort, but we also had council members that are saying, hey, it's about time that we do something about that. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great. I also happen to know from the South Sound Military and Communities Partnership, working group that I'm a part of, their social services working group, is that childcare continues to be an issue for military families in our region as well. And so, obviously that's something that they are exploring as well, is how local governments can be better partners in that effort, considering that it's a huge need. And once again, this is one of those issues that traditionally doesn't land in our lap, but here we are, and so we're willing to take it up and see what we can do about it. So thank you. So with that, we will. Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the item 4I, which is the approval of the 2024 Finance Committee work plan, which is chaired by Councilmember Lisa Parsley. Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to echo everybody about the child care, especially if you consider the Always Strong funding and our plan and all the survey results. We need to help with this. It's crippling families, and especially single parents. Thank you, everybody, for commenting to the city manager about this plan, because a good portion of our retreat had to do with the work plan for Finance Committee. If you'll notice that we kind of built the plan to every month, we're going to be talking about long-term budget sustainability. In the beginning, we're going to sort of lay out our plan for the year. We're going to talk about community polling, focus groups, how are we going to communicate this with our community and what we're facing. We're also going to be covering some of the biggest budget items and some of the deficits we are currently addressing, like our facilities plans, our moving the community court into a new building, our climate plan, and some of the budget gaps for fire apparatus, and the funding plan for the new 3 fire trucks we're going to have. And then as we go through the year up until June, we're hoping to have a plan that we can maybe discuss at retreat. And the executive team is going to be having their retreat sometime in February, March. And I can't see the city manager to see if I got that right. And they're going to be talking about this extensively as well. And then we will be layering back into the normal budget portion of the year, which starts in August, September. But the hope is through this, we'll see what our budget deficits are, what we need to fund still, and kind of put together a plan for 2025 and what is the gap and how are we going to fill that gap for 2025, 26 and onwards. And as you'll notice in there, the first 4 months after this last month through May, communications is big for this, and as well as involving our community. If there's any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Councilmember Parsley. Any questions or comments for Councilmember Parsley? Councilmember Madrone.
Yeah, one thing I noticed on the finance work plan is that it doesn't have like the staff that are assigned to each item on there. And I'm just, I wonder if that's something that can maybe be like, maybe it's with next year's work plan with finance, but just identifying the staff who are involved, because so that way, as we're looking at work plans across each committee and knowing who's on task for what, we can hopefully adjust so that they don't get too burdened in one time of the year and not enough burden in others. That's not what I meant to say, but that's what I came out.
That's actually an excellent recommendation, Councilmember Madrone. And also, if you'll notice, some of our months, the meetings look very long. So we're going to shuffle and move things a bit as we move through the year to make it sustainable for the staff. But that's an excellent recommendation.
Yeah, and since you mentioned it, I did notice that you guys are going to have a couple of 7-hour meetings. So I'm sure you guys will work through that as you go through your work plan throughout the year. But be easy on yourselves.
They got nothing on
Yeah, Aaron and I chatted about that at our pre-meeting today, and I've had conversations brief with the city manager, and I'm sure that's going to be a topic during reports for this month's committee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Councilmember Parsley? I'm going to go ahead and just piggyback off of Councilmember Madrone and thank the Finance Committee in advance for all the endless hours you're going to put in with this very ambitious work plan for the year. So thank you. All right. So seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on, and I need a motion to approve this evening's consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, consent calendar is adopted. Thank you. So that takes us to reports. We have no other business this evening, so I will begin with the mayor's report. We do have, this evening, I just wanted to notify the council that we need to eventually take future action to appoint Councilmember Cooper as our representative on the Opioid Abatement Council. First of all, thank you, Councilmember Cooper, for being willing to serve in that capacity. It's very much appreciated. And it's a very important assignment, and our city manager will speak to that, to exactly what the Opioid Abatement Council is and the work that they'll be doing.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. Appreciate the opportunity tonight and getting this appointment taken care of, because the county's asking us for all jurisdictions for our appointee to the Thurston County Abatement Council. So as council is aware, the state of Washington was engaged in a lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors. A settlement was reached, and as part of that settlement, each of the cities and the county here, Thurston County, got a portion of the proceeds from that settlement. And although each of the jurisdictions in the county, we all have our own individual control over our individual proceeds, there's been a lot of conversation about, although those monies are small individually, pulling together, we have a lot more opportunity to do something big with them. And so out of that conversation emerged the idea of a Thurston County-wide Abatement Council, where we'd have a representative from each of the cities and the counties who have funds to pool those funds and help make recommendations on how best to spend them. We have an interlocal agreement that's being worked on that will need to make its way back to council, but they would like to have this abatement council weigh in a bit on some of those decision points in that interlocal agreement before it finalizes itself. So there's a bit of an urge to get this work started sooner rather than later. So we have a need to appoint tonight. So I think that gives you the background you need, and happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Councilmember Cooper.
Just so I know what I'm getting into, didn't we already sign one? So are you talking about a second interlocal agreement?
Yeah, so we signed an initial interlocal agreement around the funds, and now we need to get at kind of the governance of that and what that looks like. And so the county and the county and the city attorneys are working on something right now, but it will need some attention from this abatement council before it finishes itself and it's ready for it to come back to the full council.
Yeah, that would be my hope, that there's not much work done on it before the council sits and has a chance to talk about what the work means. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that update.
Yep.
All right, thank you. So, Councilmember Gilman.
Are you ready for a motion?
Sure am.
I would move that the Olympia City Council appoint Councilmember Jim Cooper to the Thurston County Opioid Abatement Council.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. All right. Well, thank you all very much. So I'll continue on with my mayor's report. So on January 25th, I welcomed the Transportation Improvement District to the city, where they held their meeting here downtown at the DoubleTree. So I just provided a few welcoming remarks to welcome them to our city. Just to jog some of your memories, some of you are probably familiar, but the Transportation Improvement Board is responsible for the grant that we received for the Phones Road project. They were one of two, along with the Federal Highway Administration, with providing, I believe, about $6.1 million in grant funding for the Phones Road project. And so I went to welcome them and to thank them for that grant funding as well. The CNA MOU discussion continues to evolve. We had a meeting just last week with Larry Jezza and Melissa Allen to discuss some of the things that we talked about way back in October. I can't believe it's been that long already. But we are still having continuous discussions around some of the things that we heard from the council on how to improve the MOU, things like going back to the code and having an equity statement and defining what does community engagement look like, and providing what roles and responsibilities and clarifying that in the agreement, all of those things. And so we're continuing to have that discussion with city staff and with the CNA as well. I also wanted to share that we just last week attended the annual ODA meeting, which was where I delivered remarks, and was a very, very it was a wonderful event, actually. It was very encouraging, and it gave me a little pep in my step, if I do say so myself. I think it was nice to hear folks that are outside of the walls of City Hall compliment the work that we're doing and how they see the improvements that we're making in downtown. And so it was wonderful to hear from property owners and business owners on how they see those physical changes in our downtown. And so I hope that's very encouraging to not just to me, but to all of us who are doing this work to improve our community and to keep going. It was very encouraging. So it was a wonderful evening spent in our community. And lastly, I also wanted to share, because I forgot to share it the last time, but I told you a few months ago that I went to the new mayor's program, back at Harvard, and they sent me this gift, which is a clock of how many days are left in my term as mayor, which I thought was fantastic. So. And so I will keep it here on the dais, and it's I see it as it represents many things. I think it represents that's how many days that I have left to accomplish the vision that I have for this community and what we all want to do. And so I hope you all will take a look at that as well over the next 4 years. But on those really hard days too, I can look at it and say, oh.
900 more days.
And so there it is, and feel free to share in it if you want as well. And that's my report. As of right now, it's 1,423 days.
Let's get under 1,000.
So I will start to my right with Councilmember Madrone.
Well, I already gave you guys a thorough review of our last land use meeting, so I won't repeat that. We also had a regional housing council meeting since we last met as a council, and a few things that we got done was approving the RFPs for funding for homeless services and affordable housing. We also reinstated the RFI, the request for information, and this is to develop a pipeline of projects, so we kind of can meter in the big projects and people know who's going for what funding, and better planning can happen around some of the long-term affordable housing projects. And another thing that we addressed was off-cycle funding. So, we have this RFP process, and then, that's when you get to apply for money for your project. What happens if you have a project that emerges outside of that cycle, or, has a need that is not aligned with that cycle? So we did set aside 20% of the affordable housing funds for what's called an opportunity fund, and there's now an off-cycle request process, and we also created a request process for emergency funds as well. That's the bulk of what we did in RHC in that meeting. Thurston Regional Planning Council, this is my first meeting with this group. I guess as the official representative. We've got a new chair with Robin Vasquez at Lacey. The vice chair is Amy Evans Harding with the Port, and the secretary is John O'Callahan from the great city of Tenino. I had my third presentation on HB 1220 housing allocation based on income. And bringing a regional lens to that, there was actually a community member who expressed that 14% of this housing that we're expecting to be built is currently, in this housing allocation, supposed to be happening in rural Thurston County. However, the goal in Sustainable Thurston, which is a plan that was made many years ago and has several goals that we're not meeting, said 5% of new housing should be occurring in rural areas. So, a few of us spoke to this point that was brought forward by a community member, and my hope is that TRPC can play a role in, not just relying on individual jurisdictions to, do what we all do, but have a regional conversation around where housing is getting built and how, how that ties to our sustainability goals, our climate goals, all the goals. And that was it. They also did a really nice onboarding for new and continuing folks in the meeting. But that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Councilmember Madrone? All right, Councilmember Vanderpool.
I sat in most of those meetings, and they were very informative, and she got all of the points in there, which is wonderful. So other things I've been up to, I tried to incognito sit on this meeting. The Community Oversight of Law Enforcement meeting a couple Saturdays ago. I tried to sit in and try to get informed and see what the community was doing. I have to say, our city is full of well-informed and dedicated community members. I'd like to thank the staff, OPD, and members of the public for working on a Saturday morning for several hours in this room right here and really digging at the policy. And I think when it gets to us later this year, it'll be in a good place. Also, if no one in the public out there was able to make it to that, it is on Engage Olympia, so shout out to that. I also have been speaking with the folks at Olympia for All on some of what we're working on and informing them about what we're working on and kind of doing a liaisoning between them and us and getting an idea. So I will probably have more updates in the future as we work on our stuff. I will do a few community announcements. I'm looking forward to this one because it has puns. So,
I'm gonna listen hard now.
All right. On the Pacific Northwest Cat Cafe is opening in April in Olympia on, wait for it, Pacific Avenue. I was so excited about that. I had to show Alicia that. I had to type it up and then show her. She's like, "You're really gonna say that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to." It's so exciting.
Awesome.
The inner city winter bicycle challenge has begun. I'm doing that. Some of my councilmates are doing that. I challenge my other councilmates to do that too. Speaking of that, there was an event that happened on Sunday. Every month there is a critical mass bicycle ride. There was actually one just for members of the community who are trans, and I want to point out that because we have such a great community here in Olympia that you can have both, bicycle-oriented urbanism groups, but also groups that are specific to certain demographics that would usually be on the sidelines. But in our community, it's front and center. Yeah. Thank you.
Good job. Very good point. Any questions or comments for Councilmember Vanderpool? I love the puns too, and dad jokes. They're awesome. All right. Seeing none, Councilmember Gilman.
Thank you, and I'm relieved I won't have to ask whether you're a dog or cat person. We've got that taken care of. All right, good.
I have a comment.
Oh, you equal opportunity?
Yeah, equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity, dogs and cats. It's just such a beautiful thing, the Cat Cafe. Right. Well, I'm going to keep up the good news department. we've, both City Manager Bernie and I have brought a few updates about a process to begin having refugees settle in Thurston County. The first 75 refugees are here settling in, and on Tuesday night, I was able to attend the Thurston Multicultural Service Center, had the first English as a second language class, and then had a large group of community members come in, and each person in the class was buddied up with a community member to meet. My wife and I got to meet somebody named Gabriel and his wife Marlene, and it was really pretty amazing, and we'll continue that relationship as they're settling in. So that was an exciting thing to see. Thanks for giving me the night off last Tuesday. I appreciate that. City Manager Bernie and I also attended a listening session with MultiCare Capital Medical Center, which was, I think, a really interesting conversation about how healthcare delivery is evolving, and then also how we work together with the emergency rooms as part of our evolving response to people who aren't served by the healthcare system. And so I felt like it was a really worthwhile conversation. And the third thing I want to say is Oli Funk Fest, helping this weekend, a new music festival in Olympia, 2 venues, the ballroom at the Olympia Hotel and the Capitol Theater. The event sold out, and I just want to give a shout out to the event organizers, Danielle Westbrook, Alan Rose, and Richard Williams. Just knocked it out of the park. A ton of volunteers organized, food vendors right down Washington Street in front of the Washington Center, and it was a joyous event. So I'm hoping that will repeat. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Councilmember Gilman? Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I was in New Orleans, the home of funk, during the beginning of the show, and actually sat in on a jazz show about James Black, who was one of the drummers who helped found funk. And so here, having that happen here at the same time was really exciting. I also want to give a shout out to the Park Foundation for being the sponsor for the fiscal agent for the event.
Yeah, I just want to add thank you, Councilmember Gilman, for being having a council presence at the Funk Fest and for being there. Sounds like another emerging community event that's going to draw a lot of people downtown, which is excellent. So I do have a question for you about the new refugees that are settling in here. Not that it matters other than, for providing adequate services to them, but where are they from?
So something I learned last week is while initially I understood they were primarily going to be Afghan folks, was the very first thing I'd heard, and it's evolved over this year. It's people from all over the world. And in fact, in this English as a second language class or English language learner class, it was primarily Spanish-speaking people. So it's not just service-related folks, which is certainly an important part of who we're taking in this movement is to recognize folks who've been interpreters or other sorts of important roles in supporting our services. But it was it's kind of a United Nations as far as I can tell. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilman. It makes me proud to think that some of the communities in our country still live up to the original principles and ideals that we've held of welcoming refugees to our country, and I'm proud to have Thurston County as part of that. So thank you for representing. Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
Yeah, I have a long report. So we already heard quite a bit tonight about the Community Livability and Public Safety Committee. Just wanted to flag that the committee did choose to reopen applications for 3 advisory groups, which are the Utility Advisory Committee, the Heritage Commission, and the Olympia Metropolitan Park District, with applications closing on February 16th. So please do help us spread the word and encourage community members to consider applying. Again, that's on February 16th. We had a great presentation from Stacey Ray on the city's belonging work, which the full council will be hearing later on in the year. And we also had a very thorough presentation from the Olympia Fire Department, from the fire chief specifically. At least for me, it was, I think it's the first time that it was put in such a nice, neat PowerPoint, a quick look at the Olympia Fire Department. So I know the chief is looking forward to, if not already, has made his rounds, getting to know some council mates. And so go ahead and forward that for your viewing pleasure. And then on January 27th, I attended a celebration of local food hosted by Thurston Conservation District as part of the Climate Change and Food Production Growers Conference. This is the first time that the group has done what they call a celebration of local food. And I found it to be a really worthwhile event for my personal learning journey, trying to understand more about how local food, our urban agriculture connects with climate change and just our broader goals, other than I want to mitigate climate change and I like local food. So what exactly can we do and what's our role? So really worthwhile. We also got to hear from local farm-to-table businesses and food producers, including farmers. And I was really heartened to hear the City of Olympia and also see written down that the City of Olympia was recognized as a workplace that supports employees' access to locally grown fresh food through the Southwest Food Hub. And for anyone that's listening, you can get in on that action too by checking out the Southwest Food Hub online. And it is looking to Councilmember Cooper as he represents us on the Thurston Economic Development Council Board. That's also a big part of the Southwest Food Hub is truly the Thurston EDC. Earlier that day, also got plenty of great snacks, so you should go for that. I hope they have it again, and I will share it with everyone, and you shall go. Earlier that day, also on January 27th, I attended the Olympia Historical Society and Bigelow House Museum annual meeting. That every time I meet with that group, even if they're giving constructive feedback, I just feel like my heart has just lit up. They're just doing such a worthwhile work. So while it's a little bit lengthy, I think it's worth noting the Heritage Awards that went out. I think it really highlights just a small sampling of how deep the roots of this community goes, and then also, the gems that we have. So Toy K, a personal hero of mine, is the founder of the Olympia Area Chinese Association. She got a Heritage Award. She is 99 years old, so they wanted to get that award in. Yes. And the Olympia Area Chinese Association works to preserve Chinese culture and build bridges between the Olympia Chinese community and the broader Olympia community. The South Sound for Senior Services got a Heritage Award for 50 years of providing low or no-cost services for South Sound's aging adults. And then also, if you haven't heard of this project called Olympia's Hidden Histories Walking Tours, it's a project by the Evergreen State College students and faculty. You can find it online. It's 6 online, very thoroughly researched walking tours that focus on the history of downtown Olympia and its waterfront. It has, even though it's just 6 for now, hopefully, it has kind of a little bit of something for everyone on there. Whether your interest is, climate or music or otherwise. So also, some schools in the area got a mention. So Lincoln Elementary School, I don't know if you know this, but it has officially been around for 100 years. So it's their centennial anniversary. As well with, so on a separate award, Lincoln and Avanti High School was recognized for being designed in a 1920s, very, what is they called it? Oh, Spanish colonial revival style. And it was actually designed by a local and very prominent designer, Joseph Woleb, I think. And then finally, and just to kind of bring it home, Squaxin Park made a splash. So they did not, while the Olympia Historical Society and Bigelow House Museum did not present the award at the meeting, for the City of Olympia changing the name to Squaxin Park, formerly Priest Point Park. They look forward to joining us on March 5th to present the award in person. So really, really exciting. This is a group of people that I think probably goes without saying would love to see a museum, a home to really share the stories of the Olympia community, and the rich diversity of the Olympia history. And so there were a few comments made about when we were going to see a museum, but I love that they're not waiting until we have one; they're just keeping this going. So a lot of really great gems. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any questions or comments for Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen? All right, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. A couple of things. So the first one is just kind of taking it upon myself as the new chair of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I'm working on setting up a meeting with the 5 Lodging Tax Advisory Committee chairs in the county, just to look at how and compare how we do business, who applies, how our calendars align, and what possibilities there might be for partnership in that process within the law. So kind of playing that out and we'll see where it goes. Have great staff support from, oh no, I just lost her name. Amelia, thank you for staff. Very sharp. Amelia's running the Cultural Access Grant Program and the LTAC Grant Program, and we are very lucky to have her. It's cool. Thank you to the Mayor Pro Tem for attending the Economic Development Council meeting for me last week or the week before. The main item was that Michael Cade made 3 crock pots full of soup for lunch, and you really should have been there. I mean, he does that in January every time, so I got to do it last year. Passed a budget, thanks to a little bit of work on my part on the Finance Committee. We got the staff cost of living increases up to something a little bit closer to CPI. And then I received a snail mail copy of my board ballot at the city, and thanks Susan for getting that to me so that I could vote, because snail mail is not something that I pay that close of attention to anymore. And then just one last thing, my trip last week. So I like to, when I get a chance to visit other cities, bring back little tidbits of land use or fun things. And I tell you, city parks are so cool. Mm-hmm. Like, I got to go to New Orleans City Park for the first time, and I've been there a lot. I've been to the city a lot of times. In fact, I was stationed in the Army in Louisiana. We sort of slanted a little towards Bourbon Street then, and not the art museum and the outdoor sculpture garden. But it is a phenomenal place. It has a cafe, it has a sculpture garden, it has a built for art museum and cultural history museum in the city park, and it is really cool. And I think that it would be awesome if we thought about how could we stretch the envelope of our system to bring more amenities into it, because it draws people to the outdoors, and that helps everyone. So next time you go to New Orleans, go to City Park for your beignets instead of downtown. There's no line.
Yeah. Cafe du Monde.
Were you stationed at Fort Polk?
Yep.
Whew. You put some time in that.
They called it the armpit of America.
Exactly. Councilmember Parsley.
I thought that was Butte, Montana. My question is about the LTAC and with the other jurisdictions. Has anyone ever done a joint project or a partnership? Because that sounds intriguing, to leverage more dollars for a project.
Not that we know of, but we are going to be working to try and ask MRSC what they know as well. I would say that Lacey is extra eager to see what we can do to put things together and at least be comparing notes, because one of the things that we found in the last couple of cycles is sometimes we might be funding or not funding an organization based on our values, and then they're playing that card differently in a different jurisdiction, and it's important that we have at least be having a conversation about the different events and what we think of them. Sure.
I think it's inspired, Jim. I just wanted to say that. I think that's excellent.
Any other questions or comments for Councilmember Cooper? Councilmember Parsley.
I'm simple. I have nothing to report.
City Manager Bernie.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. I have a couple items this evening. One is I just want to give a shout out to Mary Grace Gaddu. Councilmember Cooper mentioned cultural access in Amelia. And I had the honor of introducing Mary Grace at the Olympia Rotary this week on Monday, and she gave a very great presentation and overview of our Inspire Olympia program, and it was very well received. Lots of great questions, and a lot of excitement in the community about these programs kicking off this year and the money that's going out. So I just want to give Mary Grace a shout out for her work because she did a great job there at Rotary. Secondly, this week I'll be attending the Roundtable of Thurston Counties meeting. That's a group of local business leaders that both in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors that gather on a regular basis. The city managers are ex officio members, and once a year they ask us to come and present to them. And usually they ask us to come and present about infrastructure, like what's the public works projects we're dealing with in the next few years. And I was very surprised this year and really happy that they changed the topics for us. And they asked us to come and talk about what are you doing in your communities around cultural access, and what are you doing in your community around incentivizing and building affordable housing. Unfortunately, they only give me 10 minutes to talk about those two topics. When I could talk for a couple hours on both of them. But I'm really excited to get to go this week and talk about the really amazing things that we're doing here in Olympia in both of those items. So I just want to give you a heads up that I'm going to do that this week. And then also last week, the mayor and I met with Superintendent Patrick Murphy and OSD Board Chair Seidel to start talking about a joint meeting with the council and school board. So we're looking at some dates in May. So I wanted to also mention that work is underway as well, because some of you have asked about a possible joint meeting. So we're working on that in May. And then lastly, just some news is we've got a new mayor and a new mayor pro tem, and they're looking at kind of how we run meetings. They've brought some suggestions forward, and one of those is to look at things like our sign-up sheet to make it easier for folks to sign up. And so we've made some few changes tonight that went into effect tonight. I don't know if the mayor and mayor pro tem noticed, but on the sign-up sheet, we're using larger size paper to capture more information from community members. We've added a new column to the sign-up sheet that lets community members enter the phonetic spelling of their names so that council can honor them with correct pronunciation of their name. I can't even say it. We added an invitation to sign up for the city's e-newsletters using a QR code. So right next to the sign-up sheet, there's an invitation with a QR code so you can sign up for the city's e-newsletters. And for the community members that don't know, the city offers e-newsletters with updates on 12 topics of interest to the community, including housing and homelessness, our climate actions, and our police and fire department. So as you come to council and sign up for public comment, take a moment to scan the QR code and think about signing up for our e-newsletters. And if you don't have time to come down to City Hall, if you go to our city's website and you search on e-newsletters, it will take you to a place where you can sign up for topics of your choice. So I just wanted to highlight the changes we've made to the sign-up sheets based on some feedback from the mayor and mayor pro tem. That's my report.
Wonderful. Thank you, City Manager. Questions or comments for the City Manager? Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
Thank you. I didn't walk by the table. I just looking at what we're giving up here for public comment. So so I didn't even notice. So that's lovely. Wondering, is that can the same be said for the virtual as well? Okay, get it. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm looking down at Kelly, but yes. So I think we'll alter the virtual sign up as well to get the phonetic spelling there as well.
Oh, lovely. Okay, yeah, we got some. Yeah, absolutely, we got it from Kelly. We're also getting some 2 thumbs up from Susan behind you. So that's lovely. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a pretty fast turnaround too. So really appreciate that, and great idea to have a QR code. That's efficient and contemporary. So great job. We're gonna go back to Councilmember Cooper and take us home.
Thank you. Sorry, I just forgot one thing. I want to hand out to you a copy of the Economic Vitality Index that was published by the Economic Development Council. And just a quick quiz, but I won't make you answer it on camera. Who do you think the top 3 retail sales per capita jurisdictions are in Thurston County? Olympia, Tumwater, and Yelm. Yeah. Retail sales per capita are rising in all local jurisdictions except for one small decline in Lacey. But listen to this. Per capita resale sales in Olympia in 2022 were $51,292, with Tumwater right behind at $46,631, Yelm at $34,283, and Lacey with $31,000 at number 4. So I would not have expected that. What a cool graph. Thank you.
Well, on that note, that's a great way to put some more pep on our step on our way out of here. So with no further business before the Olympia City Council, we're adjourned.
Go yell.